Ethan Grant had always been told he was a failure. He heard it from his teachers, his sports coaches, and even, at times, his own family. At 32 years old, he worked as a dishwasher in a small diner, barely scraping by. Every night, he'd trudge home to his cramped studio apartment, haunted by the thought that this was all life had left to offer him. Underneath his bed was a box of old notebooks filled with forgotten dreams, stories he'd written as a child, filled with brave heroes and daring adventures. But somewhere along the way, life had convinced him he wasn't good enough. On a rainy Tuesday night, Ethan found himself standing on a city bridge, staring at the black water below. His thoughts were heavy, his heart even heavier. Just as he was ready to let go of it all, a sudden voice shook him out of his despair. "Hey, you there!" shouted an elderly man in a rain-soaked trench coat. "What are you doing? You think jumping erases the pain?" "It doesn't." Ethan froze. He turned to see the man's piercing eyes fixed on him. The stranger shuffled closer, holding out a wrinkled, trembling hand. "Take this," the man said, thrusting a small, tattered book into Ethan's chest. "Read it. 30 years ago, that same book saved my life. Maybe it'll save yours." Confused but too shaken to resist, Ethan took the book and slumped onto a nearby bench. He opened the faded yellow pages to find a handwritten story inside. The title read, "The Phoenix Rises." It was the tale of a mythical bird that burned in its own flames, only to rise from its ashes more vibrant than ever. Ethan couldn't help but feel something stir inside him as he read, something he hadn't felt in years: hope. The next morning, Ethan made a decision. If the phoenix could rise, so could he. He dug out his old notebooks from beneath the bed, brushing away years of dust and self-doubt. His childhood dreams of being a writer came flooding back, stronger than his fears. Each night, after hours at the diner, he poured his soul into the pages, writing stories that spoke of resilience, courage, and transformation. At first, his work felt amateurish, but Ethan didn't stop. He learned. He studied other writers. He rewrote drafts until his fingers cramped. Rejections piled up faster than bills, but he refused to give up. "If I'm going through the fire," he whispered to himself, "I might as well rise from it." After months, no, years of perseverance, Ethan finally received an email that changed everything. A small publishing house wanted to turn one of his stories into a novel. He cried that night, not because he'd succeeded, but because he hadn't let failure keep him down. Within a few short years, Ethan's books began climbing bestseller lists, lighting up the world with stories that inspired millions. His tale of transformation caught the attention of media outlets, and soon he was traveling the globe, sharing his journey. But Ethan never forgot where he came from, or the man on the bridge who had saved his life that rainy night. One day, after a book signing, Ethan spotted an old man sitting quietly at the back of the bookstore. It was the stranger who had given him the tattered book all those years ago. Without hesitation, Ethan approached him. "I've been searching for you," Ethan said, tears welling in his eyes. "Your book, it changed everything for me." The elderly man chuckled and patted Ethan's shoulder. "No," he said with a knowing smile. "You changed everything for yourself. I just reminded you that you could." From that night onward, Ethan carried not only his own story, but also a legacy of second chances. His books, his speeches, even his smiles inspired others to believe in the power of starting over. And through it all, he held onto the lesson of the phoenix. No matter how many times you fall, you can always rise again.